hear me? Yes? So you'll see the agenda, and once we get to that point on the agenda, we'll turn on the video here, so you can see people here, and then you can introduce yourselves. So right now, I'm going to show you, you'll see agenda on the screen, that you should be able to see, okay? In a minute. So just kind of test the mics. Can you just go a little louder, Kelly? If you're trying to be louder. No, there's feedback. Todd, turn your mic towards Gary. Turn it the other way then. I think it's from the speaker up top. Good, test me that. She's going to start. You ready, Cal?
Well, good evening, everybody. On our first return back from the start of school that started yesterday, so why don't we start out with a pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So can I have a motion to adopt an agenda? Naomi first, Gus the second. All in favor? Goes, and we're off to the races. Okay, so we'll start out tonight with Board of Ed comments. Yeah, I'm going to let Grace go first. Grace?
So nothing too much recently. Both me and some of my Senate colleagues have continued meeting with the department regarding the diversity committee and just other things that we could do to improve student representation and things like that. And although it's a process, we're definitely working on it and we'll continue to be working on it.
Thank you, Grace. Wait a minute, can I hold on? Grace, how was your first day?
Pretty good. A lot of sitting.
Gusta?
I want to officially welcome everyone back to school. It feels good to be back, and it was great to see all the activity and faces on campus. Again, I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Robinson and Dr. Wood and the administrators, teachers, counselors, support staff, and transportation for their hard work and effort. Please know how appreciated and valued you are, and that your many hours of blood, sweat, and tears have paid off. Sorry. I'm just very happy to be back. It's been a long road. This is new for all of us with no playbook or rule book. But what I do know is we are a strong, resilient community, and we'll get through this together.
Gusta! That's awesome. Okay. Naomi?
7 months has been a long time since Our doors were shuttered March 13th, I guess technically March 16th. For yesterday's opening, I have to say, well done. It was no small feat, and there were many pressure points. But teachers, staff, and especially our administrators, thank you all. You stepped up to the challenge. I'm looking forward to hearing an update later on the agenda. As far as committees, I've been reaching out to our partnership teams and PTAs and getting schedules back, so that's all lining up. This week we have 2 meetings. We have policy tomorrow and diversity, so 2 very big ones on the same day. For policy, we're doing a second reading tonight, and if you look, these are specific to transportation, recruiting and hiring, and leave. Tomorrow, it will be student attendance, and we'll also be going over the code of conduct. And one thing that it is on our agenda today, and I'd like to I have comments specific to things like the dress code, the Confederate flag, and I'd like to save those comments to when we get to that in the agenda. And yes, welcome back, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of my colleagues.
Gary?
Excuse me, I guess I'll have to speak up, that's not a problem.
Mr. Gilbert, can you
Oh,
turn
he
the
needs a
mic
mic.
on?
Set it off again? Just prior, excuse me, just prior to leaving this evening, I read a passage from that great sage and philosopher, Kevin Costner. What he actually said in an interview was that the quality of the conversation depends upon how straight we are and honest with one another. Otherwise, we kind of just dance around. So in the spirit of that, I thought that it was very appropriate that speak to something that I think we are all thinking about, but I don't know what we're doing about it. We have seen gross inequities in the support of public education in this state. It actually happens partly as a consequence of not understanding fully what the final impact of well-intended policies would be. By that I mean we have a weighted system of giving aid in the districts that are poorest get the most, but when you cut across the board in an even percentage, then they are the ones who suffer the most, the ones that need it the most. And this is a product of long-standing structural inequality, redlining, whatever have you. To a certain extent, we've all sought better schools for our kids, and we actually reinforce some of the division between the haves and the have-nots as a consequence. So it comes down to a matter of conscience as far as I'm concerned. Where do we as a board stand when it comes to advocacy? Do we say, hey, I want my kids to have the best? Perfectly understandable. Or do we say we want all kids to have the best? Which unfortunately in this particular instance does not allow for everybody to get everything that they want. The pie here is really just so big. Now, sure, we could shift where those pieces of the pie go, but everybody seems to have a legitimate reason for it. I, of course, along with another book I'm actually reading on Sam Adams, talked about the necessity for us to support the people who are least able to get an education they need because they need it the most, and ultimately it is to the advantage of everybody. So basically, we have to decide where our values are, whether we're going to be perfectly happy and say, hey, I like the way this is. We came out smelling like a rose. Are we going to say, it's time that we stood up for what was right for all the kids and ultimately for ourselves? If we deprive one segment of our population adequate education and preparation for life, ultimately every single faction of the population will suffer. So That's all I got to say.
Todd?
No comments.
Bob?
Yeah, two comments from me. I also want to commend the district for everything done at this point to get started in terms of teaching during a pandemic. A couple of key themes came through as we walked through this, as we saw these things. One is the importance of deliberate planning by those who have to own the kids showing up, whether on the first day. That's the principals, the administrators. Everybody had to accommodate something that they had not done before to make the greater good work for how the district runs. And I think that was a theme that came through from Dr. Robinson's discussion with us. But ultimately came down to the administrators and principals and superintendent and assistant superintendents that had to make this work. And they deliberately planned it through from day one, and it's showing up and it's working, and that's a huge accomplishment. Second thing is that the importance of maintaining a high level of rigor and abundance of caution. As I read the paper, there's a couple of districts that used, I think, the term restaurant rules when they had meetings, and that has not worked out. That has created some I wouldn't say catastrophic, but I would say near catastrophic outcomes. I would say close to catastrophic, but it really is also sort of an embarrassment and aligned to my third point, which is that the importance of adults setting the example. Okay, what you do on the weekends after hours in terms of ensuring that you are safe so that when you're in front of kids during the week, from students during the week is extremely important. And I think that the district leadership is setting the example and conveying that. So I commend for all those three areas that, this was done extremely well. And we hope to continue it, and we hope that over time we get into a rhythm and people understand the rules and the rigor behind them. And then perhaps we can focus on the other things in education that we want to bring forward, perhaps extracurricular activities where it makes sense and such. So I think it's a great start. Second thing is I brought forward through correspondence what I call a sheet out of Google where I hope to speak to it sometime this evening. But really the idea is that we mentioned it last month. There are opportunities during the year where we have some presentations that could be brought forward and added to that really will allow us to have these discussions in a way that's meaningful throughout the year to ensure that we have equity across all students, equity across all grades, and continue to address the concerns that have been brought forward by our students. This is not something we will cover in one meeting. I think this is a meeting where we really need to understand the first topic in terms of teaching during a pandemic. But once we get that under control, I think there's a lot of room during this year to have these meaningful conversations and really include practices and policies that we all want to bring forward after deliberate discussion. This is not something we switch like a light. We've got some great comments from our students that I hope come forward throughout the year as well as this evening. So it's also a time to listen and understand before we make decisions on how we communicate and go forward. In many cases, I think our district is leading the way with other districts. Sometimes that is communicated, has not been communicated. Sometimes it may have been taken for granted. But that also is another voice that needs to be brought in these conversations. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I also have a few things to say. First of all, Christina is not able to make it tonight. Her husband has been released from the hospital, so she will be tending to him. So she sends her regrets. Secondly, regarding school opening, I sit here in awe, and I watched over the last couple of days where Dr. Robinson was interviewed a few times, and Shenendehowa once again becomes the one set apart. The largest school district in the Suburban Council, Section 2, hands down, really knocked it out of the park once again. We will continue to keep, as Bob was saying, we talk about rigor. It is incumbent upon all of us that we continue to set forth and continue the good work and all of the preparation and all of the work that has gone into the last 7 months for this day, what happened yesterday to open our doors for our students. It was an incredible undertaking. When I say that, it is jaw-dropping. I am watching, and I texted Dr. Robinson, I'm watching the middle school release all the kids today, and I'm like, dang, this is a lot. Every time I turn the corner coming onto campus today, dang, this is a lot. And I don't just say that to say it. It is a lot. To hear Dr. Robinson on Channel 6 when they did that interview, they did a very long interview. And, right, we are, if we can, and we will, we've really knocked this out of the park when I say that, but we've become the standard. And it is not a one and done. This will take time. We have to be very, very vigilant. But huge, huge kudos to everybody, honestly. Secondly, I like to tell you what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks since we've met. I find that to be very important as I also talk with my board colleagues and Dr. Robinson and the school administrators and the district leadership team regarding multicultural and diversity. Yes, we are going to start. What came out of our retreat this year was we want to, as board colleagues, not just talking into the microphone because we're being televised. This needs to be, these conversations that take place here and the topics that we're discussing, they need to be discussed. Our colleagues need to talk to one another. There are some heavy topics on the table and we need to hear one another. And one of the things out of the retreat this year was that we want to do more of that. And that community tonight, you are going to start to hear more of that. So I hope that, I hope our conversations become meaningful, and I know they will be. And I hope they aren't, we aren't looking at the time to do that. I mean, this is the time for us to really evolve as a board. So in saying that, I also want everybody to know that I know, we have people outside of our doors tonight that feel that Shen, they want to see it on par with other school districts or what they believe our Shenendehowa should be putting in their policies and code of conduct regarding multiculturalism and diversity and equity. I'm here tonight to tell you that I've also been working with NISBA, their legal team, to see what we can do. And I've been saying this all along that I wanted to step out and have those conversations because I need to learn too. We all need to learn. This is a learning project that none of us are there yet, none of us. And when you say you are there, then I look at you and say, man, you probably got some room to go. So what I've done is I've talked to NISBA. I gathered some information. I will be also reaching out to a civil liberties union that they gave me some resources to research because I want to learn what we can do better here policy-wise and code of conduct. I know we're going to delve more into that, but I find it important that you all know what I've been working on as well as what I share with this board. Okay. All right. Yes, Gary.
Sorry, may I say one more thing?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I know we're all aware of the policy that NISCA unit has been implementing and so forth. And I read it as carefully as I could, and I thought it's a very good document, generally speaking. I thought, and maybe I missed it, I thought that there was one thing that was missing in that document. And while it's talking about, it mentions and it advocates for inclusion of the contributions of the various groups of people that have been part of making this country what it is. I think one of the things that we have to do is to not gloss over our warts. Those things where this country said one thing and did something quite different as a matter of actual policy. Some people would say, if I were to enumerate these things, oh, you're anti-American. That's not it at all. Very much in favor of everything we stand for, but we need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And I think one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that the kids don't go away thinking that everything we ever did was absolutely pure at heart and motivated for the right things, or that they were indeed even moral. Put that in context and say, how do we make ourselves better? What do we do now so that we don't repeat what our ancestors did that we can't be proud of?
It's a good thought, Gary. And I know we will be addressing, I have it right here, when we get to the code of conduct, we can bring that up. So I'm going to move to public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. Because this meeting is being held with limited in-person attendance, if you are a district resident, please send questions, comments via boe@shenschools.org. All questions, comments come into the Office of Public Information Officer and are shared with the board and the superintendent. The board will not address specific questions, comments, but ask for your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions, concerns are typically addressed by the superintendent and/or designee. Having said that, I know we have students. Go Grace first. Okay.
Before we go to the students, can I ask, just put this out there for future board meetings? Since we do have the social distance and we are limited, we can't have the public in here because we don't have the space. Could we consider moving the board meetings to High School East, to the auditorium, to a place so that we could social distance, invite members of the public in that reach out, notify us that they want to be here for board comments? I think that, as I walked in, there was someone that wanted to comment and complained that there's no way to do that. Now, I know you just shared that they should email their comments, but a lot is lost if they don't have the opportunity to say what they prepared. If someone else reads it, there's something lost there. Inflection, passion, that's not there. So could we come up with a way, either moving to High School East or another way so that members of the public could, their voices are heard, that they can personally deliver their message?
I think that needs to be a discussion, Dr. Robinson, for safety lines and whatnot, but we can discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, Grace?
I asked Dr. Rob a pretty similar thing.
Oh, you did?
Even if it's just something.
Oh, yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I did ask a similar thing because I agree. And even if it just has to be something, for, whatever rules or regulations or for whatever reasons, even if it just has to be something like a video, that's still better than just reading something. And I can sit here and I can talk about, the students all I want. And I can say that with passion and everything else, but that's never going to replace the stories of things that I never experienced that other people did. And I just think that especially, given the context and given the way that things are playing out, and even without that, it's important to be able to incorporate that right now. But as for this point in time, then I think that's all I have.
Jack, can you hear us now? I can't hear you, Jack.
He's mute?
Very muffled. I'm not sure if there was a microphone that got knocked out of place or something.
Is this better now?
I can hear you, Dr. Robinson, when you're shouting a little bit, but
Okay, so we're
we
just.
definitely can't hear down the.
No problem, we'll just speak louder. So, at this point, I think there's some introductions to be made. So who will be doing the introductions?
I'll be starting off, and I'll lead the officers down the line as we're doing that. So thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. For those of you board members who I've not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Jack Kelly. I am the serving president this year for the 2020-2021 SFA Senate. I believe I've worked with many of you in the past. I'm so excited to get to work with you this year and in the future. And before we continue any introductions, I would like to give my deepest thanks and congratulations to our fantastic board and our fantastic administration for giving such a fantastic welcome back to school. I mean, it had its challenges, but it was met with grace, and it went as successfully as I could have even possibly imagined. I was blown away by how well organized it was, how safe I felt, and the other officers can agree that we are very grateful to have such a fantastic team working for us to represent us. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to my Vice President, Joyce Vu.
Hi, I'm Joyce Vu. I was the previous Senate representative to the Board of Education, and I was elected Vice President for this upcoming school year. I'm class of 2021, so a senior this year, and I'm super excited to be working with the board for one last year and to have continued success. And also, piggybacking off of Jack, thank you all for all of your continued efforts to help us get back to school safely.
Cameron, you're muted, Cameron. So, Joyce, we can't hear Cameron, so can you introduce someone else?
Yes, we can move, we can move right on, Gloria, if you're available.
Gloria, you're also muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm Gloria. I've been serving, Gloria Campanides, but I've been serving on Senate. This is my 4th year. I'm parliamentarian. So I don't want to repeat Jack and Joyce. I had a great time at school the past 2 days. I'm very impressed. I'm excited to work with everyone. Probably won't be seeing me as much, but I'll try to get involved as much as I have. First time being a Senate officer, but I've worked a few events, so nice to meet you all.
Sorry about that there. I had an issue getting my mic unmuted. Super excited to get to see everyone on the board again. I'll be the Senate Treasurer this year. We definitely are going to have a lot of new challenges this year with everything operating, but very excited to get to work with such a fantastic officer team and get to meet a lot of new members on the Senate this year.
Hi, my name is Yicheng Huang, and I am a senior this year. My position is the representative to the Board of Ed, and I am very excited to work with all of you this year. So I'll pass it on to Trinity, my other board rep.
Hi everyone, I'm Trinity Sanders. I have been a part of Senate since freshman year. I'm really excited to work with the board this year as a Board of Education rep for Senate. Like Cameron said, we will have a couple challenges this year since everyone is virtual or hybrid or whatever, but I truly work with Senate in terms of equality and really making sure that we are pushing for development of all persons who know how to get up and start with the day. That's really important. We'll be able to whatever we do as we work together. So thank you for
Hi, my name is Andre Agnino, and I'm serving as our secretary for the 2020-2021 Senate year. So this is my 3rd year in Senate, going to be my 3rd year in Senate, and I am a junior. And overall, I'm excited to do any duties I have as secretary, as well as just helping out the Senate officer team in general. And I'm so impressed by how the year's been run already. I was shocked to see how organized it was, because in all honesty, I've seen how other schools handle it. I wasn't sure what I'd expect, and I'm really excited to see how this year. It made me still excited to be in school. But overall, I just think the environment is just beyond what I could have ever expected, and I'm just excited to help out with this year anyway and beyond my specific duties. And our last member of our office team is going to be Grace Berna.
Hi again. I'm serving as this year's Deputy Secretary / Press Secretary. So I'll be helping out the officer team in any way that I can, and handling communications largely, as well as doing my job here until this term ends. So looking forward to working with everyone, continuing that, and also just working with the Senate and getting them more involved directly with things and to the public. So.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody, and you got real, well, there it is, student testimonial on how it all went, right? That was really great. Thank you so very much, and I wish you all the best of a great year, some of you seniors, and I know it'll be great. It'll be good. I know it will be. So going from there, Dr. Robinson. Oh, hold on. I do have a public comment, though, I wanted to acknowledge. So we did have a member of the community reach out, as much as we're saying, Naomi, Mr. Francois Paget, and talking about, the subject was about a 504 plan. So I know that district leadership and Mrs. Mylott, I'm sure, is working on that response back to that community member. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevenson. So Jack, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Again, I'd just like to reiterate Mr. Stevenson's comment. First of all, thank you all very much for coming on the Google Meet after, especially our virtual students probably have been virtual all day. So it's your new norm, so to speak. And your comments goes right into some comments I would like to make tonight regarding, just going to tie it into the opening day comments as well. Clearly, the last several months, there's been a singular focus, and the singular focus has been on Monday, getting to Monday, and getting to Monday to a point where when we look back at it, we say all the work was worth it. And probably the best way to gauge that is through our students. I've had myself personally spend the last 2 days traveling with Dr. Wood, visiting every building every day, trying to assess what's going on and what's going well, what's not going so well, and trying to learn from those things as we move forward, recognizing that we're only in day 2, and as I mentioned to Mrs. Miller, we have 178 more to go. So the objective is, as I even shared with a parent today in an email, that today is better than yesterday, and our plan and hope is that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And so if we keep that same perspective and that same open mind, we'll embrace whatever the challenges that we will face, recognizing it is a reality. We will have challenges, and we will have COVID cases. I mean, and I say that in a sense that not to wish us bad luck or anything, but it's a reality. That's why we're doing the things that we're doing. So I want to start there in the sense that if I can't emphasize enough to our public, to our parents, to our students, it's not so much what you do in school. We have a very controlled environment in school. It's what people do out of school. And so I can't ask our young people enough to say the same protocols that you demonstrate when you're in school, practice those same protocols out of school. When you're hanging out with your friends, wear your mask. Practice your social distancing. Just because you know someone, like someone, live in the same neighborhood with them, doesn't mean you drop your guards, because the reality of it is we see that's where the clusters arrive, when people in neighborhoods get together and drop their guards. And so I really want to emphasize that because we want schools to stay open. We want to continue providing a quality education for our students. And so it really does takes into consideration the actions of everyone. So I'm asking our young people to please be that ambassador with your peer groups as well as we move forward. Related to that, some of the things that we could not have anticipated, or quite frankly couldn't have planned for until we lived the experience. One of those was the drop-off and pickup. We anticipated that we were going to have more parents dropping off kids than normal. And however, the reality of it is we had more than we anticipated. And so while we had plans in place, we literally had to make adjustments on the fly, right as people are coming in. And I want to say kudos to a lot of folks, from Barb Saliker, who's just been a trooper on many fronts, to our grounds guys, to our aides, to everyone pitching in, to security, to members of the Saratoga County Sheriff Department. Everyone pitching in all at the same time, making adjustments on the fly. To our transportation folks who are exercising tremendous patience when buses roll up to the bus port and the bus port is filled with cars, because we're simply trying to get cars unloaded as we move forward. So a lot of patience exercised over the last 2 days, and a lot of adjustments have been made to make all those processes smoother as we move forward. A big issue of balancing class size between virtual and in-person continues, because we have parents every day say, hey, I wanted to do this, but now can I do this? And so we're trying to make those adjustments the best we can to, again, ensure all our students have an opportunity for a great educational experience. And so that's an ongoing piece from us, and we asking parents, again, to recognize that just because you send an email at 3 o'clock doesn't mean it's going to happen at 7 o'clock the next day. Is a big piece of that piece as well. On the safety side, the self-certification process. So we went from this summer with the process that was certifying probably 30 people or so, small number of people. It was a great chance for us to pilot, to a process that's now certifying over 8,000 people. So just think about the magnitude, the sheer magnitude of that shift is something that we're in the process of managing now. And that process is not a Shen process. It's a requirement that we have to do for all employees and all students. And initially, our initial plan was only for students who come in person. However, the state has a dashboard database that we also now have to report on students that are learning virtually. So today, a lot of parents received a correspondence that all students, doesn't matter if you're virtual, remote, in-person, hybrid, all students have to do the certification, because when you think about, in essence of, the state wants us to have some sense of what's the conditions of our kids, because we know that even though a child might be learning virtually, that child could very well be interacting with someone else that's coming to school. And so while this may be an inconvenience to parents, the process is actually pretty straightforward. The documents or the links are pre-populated with the student information in there, so it's a matter of checking yes or no on a few things and done. And the process is very redundant, so if you don't do the first email, you're going to get another email. And if you don't do the second email, you're going to get another email, because we want to make sure that people get those information points. And we're still working through it right now to make sure that we have the most updated email addresses of parents, to make sure we're getting that information out. So this week has been a tremendous effort to get that self-certification out to all our students and also to all our employees, to contractors, you name it. So it's a pretty significant task, because that's our first, if you want to say, first line of defense of people saying, how do I feel physically? Do I feel well? Do I not feel well? And if you don't, stay home. That's a pretty simple premise at this point. Stay home, contact your physician, see what's going on before you come and take a chance coming to school. So we're in the process of going through that right now as well. We also piloted, actually more than pilot, we actually purchased some, if you want to say, infrared heat scanners for temperature, and so we're in the process of installing those. We started first at high school, because high school is where we have the largest population of students coming through, and at transportation. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have a good sense of how to best locate those things and how well they actually work. We know that this has been a model in the private sector, and some cases you hear great successes, some cases you don't hear such great successes. But again, it's a second layer of trying to identify issues in terms of people coming into the building with high temperature, particularly a temperature of 100 or above. But the first layer is first, that people have to be absolutely honest. If you're not feeling well, don't come to work, don't come to school, try to figure out what's going on with yourself instead of taking a chance and potentially infecting or exposing others to the infection. So that's something I really want to emphasize, that because we have great opportunities ready for our students, and we want to be able to exercise those opportunities for the next 178 days, period. School days it is. Another part that we're working through right now is the understanding the regulations. Like every day we get a new clarification on something, and oftentimes, if someone read the email from last week today, and then they get another email, they say, well, last week you said this. Yeah, we probably did. And this week, this is this, because new clarification is coming out, particularly around the issue of the health screen and symptoms and what should parents do. So we're still working through some of those details. We hope that by the end of the week, we'll be able to send out, quite frankly, to what we're going to say. Hopefully, this will be the final correspondence on that, because right now there are several different correspondences out there that's a result of how the information has evolved over the course of the last several weeks. And so hopefully that will work. We're working very closely with Saratoga County Department of Health. Kudos to those folks. They've been very, very patient and very straightforward with us, and we have a great relationship with them. So trying to work with them to understand how some of these Department of Health regulations play out for us and what we need to do as a school to be proactive on that front as well. Tomorrow, on Thursday, we'll have a new group of 712 students. And so Thursday become the first day of school again for a whole bunch of kids in person. And so the good thing is we would have already had 2 days of experience, and then using those 2 days of experience to make those transitions a lot smoother once we have, particularly, again, 712, once we have the new group of students that start that Thursday, Friday sequence. Related to that, we have what we have established is a virtual Wednesday for all kids, and we're in the process now. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so tomorrow's virtual Wednesday is going to be different because we're very much still in the planning process of that. Probably towards the end of the week, if not by next Monday at the latest, Dr. Wood, who's our deputy superintendent, will be sending out a correspondence to parents to explain in greater detail what that Wednesday would look like. We've been having a lot of conversations with our teacher leadership to make sure that everybody's on board. It's a combination of opportunities to engage kids. It's a combination of the fact that we still need to engage a lot of PD to do the things differently. As Grace so aptly said, it's a lot of sitting, and we don't want the lot of sitting to become a boring experience for kids. So PD and making sure it's an engaging experience for our students, not only students here in person, but the same students, particularly 712, who are tapping into those classrooms, that it's a very dynamic experience for all of our students. And so we're working on some details related to that as well. So that was a recent change in the process as we move forward. And I'm going to just two more comments, and I'm going to see if there are any questions from the board. The dashboard piece, as I mentioned before, just today, and I sent a link to the board in Friday Bulletin, the state actually sent out what the public view of that dashboard would look like. And essentially every day by 3 p.m., Mrs. Carmen, who is our designated COVID-19 coordinator, and what that means, she's in constant communication with the Department of Health. Jill Bush, who's our HR director, is a secondary to Mrs. Carmen on that every day by 3 p.m. we have to report any confirmed COVID cases of students and our staff. The challenge, and that's why the communication with the health department becomes so important, because we're getting information from them. And so we have to constantly have that conversation point, and we're constantly verifying information as we move forward. The fiscal realities, as both Mr. DeLallo alluded to earlier, we are fortunate in many ways, as somebody needs to mute online. Chris, can you mute?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you mute, please? That's it. So we're like in two technologies. This is like what classrooms are like. We have some kids virtually and some kids in person, and everyone has to exercise good patience as we move forward. The fiscal realities here for Shenendehowa. Mr. Coleman, can you mute? Thank you. The fiscal realities here for Shen is better than many. However, it's still an issue that we monitor very, very closely. Because the reality of it is, right now, we are positioned that, okay, barring no further changes from the state level, we'll make adjustments and move forward. However, if there are changes from the state level, things that we're planning 6-8 months from now could very well change. And so we have to anticipate the worst case scenario and plan for those things and assuming the best as we move forward. So we just had a conversation today with all our administration about that we have to look for opportunities to tighten the belt as we can on certain things. And tighten the belt doesn't mean we're not providing opportunities for students. Tighten the belt is making sure that we maximizing opportunities when we have those opportunities and maximizing resources and leveraging those resources. In other words, if we do one thing well here, it avoids us spending money on several things down the road type sequence. So that's a thinking process that we're going through right now. And certainly there are a lot of inconveniences or that people may encounter, but I tell you that the inconveniences are worthy of the outcomes that we want, which is a safe and quality experience for our students and for our employees to be here in the space we call Shenendehowa. A lot of new rules, a lot of new demands, a lot of new changes, and that will be the name of the game. Every day, something new comes out that we have to contend with, make the adjustment on the fly, and make it seamless to our end users. And that's always the challenge. The end user shouldn't have to see all the hiccups that we're doing behind the scene to make it seamless to our end user. And end users meaning our parents, our students, our employees, our community at large. So kudos to a lot of folks. I'm not going to say names because I have to tell you that it's been very impressive, particularly over the last month and a half, 2 months, just to see people just simply commit to grind to make things happen. People bonding together and working together. I mean, someone said to me, man, we'll never do this singular again. We were always going to have to collaborate on this, especially now we're looking at particularly the 6-12. Before we always say secondary level, but we always say middle school and high school. But now we truly do have a secondary approach to things, for example, of how people bonding together and taking advantage of each other's strengths as we move forward. So I'll pause there. If there's specific questions you may have as a board, I'd be more than happy to address them.
I just had a comment. I was very impressed as well with the lunches. I don't know how Katie pulls that off. I don't even know how that happens. But the cart shows up, at least in middle school, and they aren't even putting coats in. They're just getting fed, right? So that is amazing and such a wonderful thing to do for the students. And then the buses, I'm just wondering, I'm sure you don't at this point, do you know how much less of a number that or how far off are we?
When you say far off, meaning?
We thought we were going to have these many kids on a bus. And
So right now, I think we're better off than we anticipated. So that's a good thing on one side. The problem on the other side is that we have more people driving than we anticipated. So that's the trade-off, right? And we know there's going to be some regulation that's happening, where what the excitement and the capacity that people have the first week, the first month is going to be different than the second week, the second month. And so we're going to start seeing that capacity balance moving forward as well. Also, it's the degree of comfort that people have. As our students pointed out, that kids were coming, some kids coming not having any idea what it was like, because the last time they were in an environment was March 13th. And so they had no idea what this is going to look like, feel like when they got there. And in some cases, they hear the horror stories of other places. And I think most people are pleasantly surprised. And again, kudos to our students. I'm so impressed. The kids are following the rules. They're following the protocols. They're doing the things. We don't have the pushback. We don't have, it's awesome. And as long as those things keep happening, we're staying in a good place. So the transportation piece is, I think it's going to be some regulating that take place with that as parents get comfortable with their routines as well. We'll see some of that take place, and we'll probably see a greater increase in ridership and a lower increase in people driving. However, regardless, we're prepared for both realities.
I have two questions, but you reminded me of something specific to transportation. Did you have kids get on the bus that were supposed to go Thursday, Friday? Did you have anything like that?
We didn't have a lot. The reason why we didn't have a lot of that is because kudos to the building administrators. They send out communications on top of communications on top of communications. A lot of redundancies, several times, several days. For instance, I was here over the weekend and driving through the campus. Every principal on campus was here at some point during the day, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, sending out last-minute correspondences, making sure things were ready. And I think because people really saw that they needed to make sure that communications were clear and explicit for students, videos were made, sent home. We had students in videos talking about how you wear your mask and the patterns of walking through the high school, for example, or the middle school. So there's an abundance of information was shared to make sure that people coming in had a good sense of what was expected of them from the beginning. So we didn't have that. We had, you have the kid who was supposed to take the BOCES bus from his or her home, that actually the parents brought them to school, and then they got to school and realized, I got to take the BOCES bus. But transportation made those adjustments on the fly. So those are what I call the logistical. Anything logistical we can deal with. And so we had very few of those type things. And again, kudos to, one, kids paying attention. So many kids had, I don't know if Grace had her schedule on her phone or not, but so many kids had the phone on the apps on their phone and have information right at their fingertips. And even the piece always amazing to me, people don't realize that our 10th grade students, this is their first time being in the big house, as they would say, in High School East. And for those kids, the fact that the pattern was simpler made it easier for those kids to find their way around high school. We don't say pattern, because there's only certain cars you only go one way, certain cars you only go the other way. And so that pattern made it easier, and then the lack of 9 transitions in a day made it easier for those kids also to fall into the routine. And so that's the one that we're always concerned about, the kids who come into the building for the first time, how quickly they're going to acclimate. And I would say those kids quickly picked up the routine after that first day of saying, where's this room versus that room? So those type things were anticipated and addressed right away with staff. And I'm only using high school because high school is always the most complicated one, because of numbers and also because of the variation of courses that kids take. We saw the same thing at the elementary level. Little kids getting off, kindergarten kids know that they had to go this way, and other kids know they had to go this way. So the kids quickly figured out their routines and fell right into it on day 2.
Thank you. Do you plan to put a link for the dashboard on our website so to make it easier for people to get to it?
Haven't thought about it, but we'll look at that.
Okay. And then one last thing. There were no problems with Wi-Fi? I know that bandwidth, well, I heard that bandwidth was challenging just because everyone's on their Chromebooks now.
So I wouldn't say no problem, but nothing significant. One of the things that, and again, kudos to Ken McDermott and his folks, not only for the work that they did over the last several weeks and even this weekend, but when we, for the board recall, several years ago, we went through a huge technology upgrade. At that point, the pipeline that we put in place, we were totally underutilizing at that point, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And so it's great that we had this pipeline that we're using this much of, and now we're probably here. So the question is, how much further can we go? That's the big question, right? So the capacity pieces were there, but the issue became, such as here, we have a science teacher teaching out of the library. So do we have the same kind of capacity issues for kids to tap in? The fact that we're wireless makes those kind of things beneficial. However, we're always at the mercy of the outside sources that we use. And so any given day, you could have a huge national whatever downturn of one of the, be it Google or any of those kind of things that impact what we do. However, I think people are reticent of that and accustomed to that and willing to make those adjustments to those type things. And that's because that's the reality of technology. Right now, things season up at different points, but we didn't have any what I would call significant or even notable bandwidth issue because we anticipated some of those things and took advantage of the capacity that we had in the past.
Okay.
Which is great, which is a big concern for many, many places.
We discussed a bit about the need for rigor, the need to stabilize around new norms. Do you see a point, sort of a threshold where we master that and can then talk about things like the extracurricular activities that can come forward? Again, staying within the guidelines. Community conversations, like we've done in the past, where I think that's the numbers that attend community conversation, good social distance. Other activities, concerts and such. I think there's a lot of ways that students can be reassured that those potentially could come forward if we stay on the path of these guidelines.
And I think your words, Mr. Presley, are well chosen, the potential piece of it. So when we plan, we didn't plan, thou shalt never do these things again. We planned, here are the things we need to prioritize, do these things well, learn from those experiences, and then build capacity as we move forward. Because the worst thing we could do is try to do a whole bunch of things and don't do any of those things well. And you even hear it when Mr. Colin talked about sports. In a second here, not to steal his thunder, but the whole progression of low risk, medium risk, high risk sports. And we're saying, let's do the things, let's master some things, do some things well, learn from those experiences, and move forward. So we're constantly looking at those type things as we move forward. And also as the state relax some of the allowances. A lot of the restrictions we have now is because we have restrictions by executive order regulations say we can't do certain things in certain ways. And so I think as some of that relaxes, and they're only going to relax based upon the infection rate. And so that's why, it's good practices, good safety habits will lend to the ability for us to effectively do some of those things moving forward. And clearly the fiscal realities, we're all looking to see how that's going to impact some of those things moving forward. Want me to just continue? So Mr. Colin is on the line here, and I'm going to, let me pull up your presentation here, Chris. Chris, can you see your presentation?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, so let me tell me when you want me to scroll up, and I'll do that.
Could you say that one more time?
Tell me when you want me to scroll up, and I will do so.
Okay, so I'll get started then. First of all, I want to thank the board for having us in tonight from athletics. I want to echo a lot of the sentiments of, all the work that went in over the summer and the work that Dr. Robinson, Dr. Wood, Mrs. Bush, all the DLST members, and especially all the administrators in the district did. I think it's been phenomenal. When we left off talking to the board about our athletic program, it was March 13, 2020, and we had just come off winning 2 regional championships. And a senior came into my office and said, hey, are we going to be able to return? I said, yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Well, a couple of weeks has turned into 6 months. So it's here tonight that I present to you our plan for the return to interscholastic athletics. On March 24th, or on March 4th, on August 24th, Governor Cuomo authorized low-risk and medium-risk sports to return. How do we return to athletics safely? We're working off 2 key documents. The DOH guidance for health interim guidance for sports and recreation, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association return interscholastic coaching guidance. One of the things when we talk about how do we return to athletics safely, we're talking about that we have to collaborate with 15-member schools in the suburban council, which presents a unique set of challenges that we are now mixing cohorts from other districts, and we have to do that safely. So how do we create a process where student athletes, coaches, officials, spectators can safely participate and watch interscholastic athletics? You can go to the next slide, Oliver. What we will return to on 9/21. What we are looking at returning to on 9/21 is all our junior varsity and varsity sports with the exception of volleyball and football. Those 2 sports, as you may have heard, have been moved to a gap season in March and April, and the spring sports will be pushed back to late April through the end of June. One of the things I do want to share with the Board of Education here tonight, and again, if it's a little bit tough, I'm talking into my cell phone here, but one of the things is unfortunately due to transportation issues, scheduling issues, students being in hybrid models, different release times in every district across the council, the Suburban Council has decided not to offer modified and freshman sports for the fall of 2020. This is a decision that does not come easy to the 15 athletic directors who are responsible for all these students, but at the same time, in looking how the school is returning to school, it fits in line with what we're doing. And we have followed a model similar to what school buildings are doing, that we will be running a program for roughly 35% of our normal fall program. Each year when I get the opportunity to present in November, I usually tell you that we have around 1,000 fall athletes. This year we'll have roughly 350 fall athletes, with our focus being on the varsity and junior varsity sports. Some of the steps that we are taking here at Shenendehowa. Over the course of the last week, we've held mandatory coaching meetings for all varsity and junior varsity head coaches and assistants. And during those mandatory meetings, we've gone through all our policies, our procedures, our expectations. Athletes and coaches self-certify every day, how that's going to work. Establishing protocols for practice, such as times, locations, no sharing of equipment, how you bring your own water bottle. The expectations for mask wearing, which is something we're really going to have to strongly educate our student athletes about. Participating in contests. We have league established protocols for team hosting and team traveling that we are ready to arrive and play when we get to another school. In accordance with DOH and NISPA guidelines, each athlete can have 2 spectators. We've ordered 6,000 badges in the Suburban Council, which 2 will be given to each athlete to give to 2 spectators, which we can then know who they are, so that for contact tracing purposes, we know exactly who was at our events every day. You can see in the presentation there that the front of the badge has spectator badge 2020, and that we have on the back of the badge, maintain social distance, always wear your mask, and that you're not experiencing any symptoms of COVID. We will not be utilizing concession stands this year. We have to establish some booster club expectations. We really want to discourage the practice of the pasta parties on the weekends, or anything which brings a team together in a large group outside of the instructional process associated with the sport. We need all our athletes, coaches, and staff working together. We've worked hard on the protocols. My staff has worked hard. We need everybody on board. The thing that I would say to the board members, and Dr. Robinson and I had a lot of conversation about this, it will look different, but it will be Shen Athletics. And I would just say this to you, that I have felt, and I've shared with Dr. Robinson this on numerous occasions. Since March 13th, I have felt a strong obligation to do everything in my power for our student athletes to make sure that they have the opportunity to compete. When I talk to student athletes who didn't participate in the spring and realize all the things they lost, while it's not the end of the world, it is important to them. It is important for their mental health. It is important for the school experience. So I'm glad to see that tonight I was able to come in and give everybody an update on where we're at. And I do want to thank Dr. Robinson for his support, and as well as the Board of Education. Okay, could you hear me okay, Dr. Robinson?
Yes, you can, Chris. Are there questions from the board?
So,
If you just speak louder so we can just capture it.
Chris, can you hear me? It's Deanna.
Yes, I can, Deanna.
Okay, do you have any more, can you expound upon more of the mask wearing and when it's appropriate and when it's not, or are you not there yet?
We have an expectation along the lines of the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Public High School Athletic Association that we expect student athletes to wear masks when they cannot socially distance. That also has a caveat with it, though. If the athlete cannot tolerate it, they have the right to remove the mask. The first couple weeks of practice is going to be an educational experience for our student athletes, how they learn to work with wearing a mask while competing. Talking to most of our coaches, that's going to be one of the things they're going to be focusing in on during the first couple weeks of practice. Does that answer your question, Deanna?
Thanks, Chris.
Chris, I have one question. For the benefit of all those who are watching, in your presentation, you say that it excludes volleyball and football. Can you state what it does include?
I could not hear the question.
Chris, what are the low-risk sports that we will be playing?
The low-risk sports, the medium-risk sports are soccer and field hockey. The low-risk sports are tennis, golf, cross-country, swimming and diving, and I'm missing one other. I forget what the last one is. I apologize.
So the medium and low risk are included in the fall?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? One of the things Mr. Coleman will be also doing, and we wanted to first make a presentation here to the board, working with Mrs. DeFisciani to do some type of communication. We may very well do a voiceover piece that we send out, or trying to figure out how to make sure we get parents getting the same information from him and not getting other people's interpretation of what we'll be doing, and also some of the rationale, if you will, behind why certain decisions were made. Because I know that we're going to hear from parents of modified and freshman kids. The reality of it is there are many, many factors that prevented that from happening in the fall. And again, same thing I said before, we're going to learn from those experiences, because there are many schools, by the way, across the state that's not doing any sports in the fall. And there are schools, even regionally, not doing certain mid-level sports. And you probably read some of them in the newspaper recently that's creating a big stir with some of our locals. So there's always a balancing act in terms of how we can effectively do things. Not so we can have the best plan here, but other schools impact how we execute those plans. We'll still be looking for some opportunities to engage our younger kids some point down the road. However, at this point, our focus now is to same way we plan to get to the first day for opening day, Mr. Colin is planning to get to the 21st. And even today, we had some folks jump the gun, and Mr. Colin had to kind of rein them back in to say, hello, you're not starting to practice yet. And in many cases, because some of these kids have been with each other all summer, and they think that, okay, they heard sports, so they could figure they could start jumping into it. However, the reality of it is our formal piece won't kick off until the 21st. And so we're trying to balance the difference between when kids did youth sports and now they're trying to transition to school sports.
I have a question. Chris, it's Gusta. In terms of the badges, does it have to be the same two spectators that they get, the student gives their whoever the badges, and the expectation is the same two spectators each time?
Can the spectators vary from game to game, Chris?
Yeah, what we're going to be doing is, with the badges, the student athlete is going to be responsible for giving the two badges out. And what we're going to do is, if we ran into a problem, we would at least have the ability to go back to that student athlete and say, okay, who had the badges on that day? We would think we would know based on who the student had given the badge to. We're assuming the majority are going to go to parents and family members.
Thank you.
Chris, I have one more question. What about the students who have reached out that are CVL that want to still participate in, say, these fall sports? Will they be able to participate?
Yes, CDL students are allowed to participate.
And that's also, so when you think about that, that's the New York State Education Department ruled that they're bona fide bona fide enrolled students in the district, subsequently eligible for participation in sports. The piece that, and again, I'm going to tie this back to the first comment I made about why kids have to also self-certify, is if we need all kids self-certified, because we need to know what's their status at any minute of the time, because in this case, these particular kids might be coming to do sports. We need to make sure that's happening, but that's just one of the reasons why the state wants every kid to be self-certified, that we know what's the status of kids on a daily basis, and so that's one of those things. Again, the conversation with parents about bringing their kids to practice, after practice, those things become a piece of it, because transportation is a real issue that they have to work out here as we move forward as well. So and it's a tricky one, but the allowance is there, and we are certainly balanced accordingly. So more to come as this unveils. Chris, thank you very much for joining us tonight. You don't have to stay the whole time. We appreciate you coming on board.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I look forward to seeing you guys at games in a few weeks. Thank you again.
Thanks, Chris. So at this point, let me stop, since we have no one else on the meet. You want me to continue? So we have a couple, there'll be relatively fast updates. The NISBA delegate piece, I shared with Mr. Stevenson that typically, and we're still trying to find out, and we'll confirm again tomorrow with NISBA. We have been getting information on NISBA for the upcoming virtual convention in October. And once we get information, we clearly share it out with the board. But however, a piece that we need to do in anticipation of that is designation of someone as the voting delegate. In the past has been Mr. Delala with Mr. Presley as the alternate. So that's something we want to try to do at this meeting. So once the information starts flowing, we're ready to provide the information to NISBA.
So at this point, I think we've had this discussion. Gary, I'm thinking we talked about this, and Bob would now be the assigned delegate, correct?
I would be very well pleased if Bob were to become the delegate.
Okay, Bob, are you? I think you're very willing to do so. Okay.
Sorry about
Do you
that.
have any comments about that?
I have no comments. Any board members comments?
So you're going to do great. And I think you had a great mentor, so I think it's all good.
Great. And so at this point, Mr. Miller is coming forward. We're going to do, again, we every year we have a dashboard and a lot of different data sets, recognizing this year next year we're going to have some new data sets that we're presenting based upon the configuration that we're living right now and into the year. So Bob's just going to highlight some few highlight points. You all have the presentation. And one of the things that we're trying to do, per the board request at the retreat, is when we have presentations, we send them in advance to the board. So we're not sitting here trying to go through 20 slides. We try to do what I call the flyover view. And if there's specific questions that the board may have, the presenter will be more than happy to address those questions. So, Bob, you want to do the flyover view and then take the question?
Where do you want me to stand?
Oh, yes, you need a microphone for you. Sorry, you could, yes, sir, thank you. And I'll be more than happy to click for you.
Okay. So the slides that are up there now is the actual 57-page dashboard that you received. That's not the one we're going to spend a lot of time on tonight. The shorter one, which I think you also got, right? You received this one? Okay. That's the one actually, when it says presentation, that's the one we want to use because it's shorter. And it also has the more up-to-date stats that are on it. So probably just start by saying, I think all of the board's gone through this for at least 2 or 3 times now, so you have some view of what's there. That last, you notice we got the little COVID guy on there, because that has, as it has affected the schools and our lives, it affects all the statistics that we have. When you look through the dashboard and you looked at the months of March, April, May, and June, they look significantly different in areas of attendance and so on and so forth, because the attendance was different as a result of that. So the dashboard has been the same categories for a number of years. We really look at performance indicators for the students. So we do look at attendance. We do look at the enrollment, regular and special ed. We look at portal usage, because that's our communication tool and, in a sense, a feedback tool for parents to converse with the school. We also, at the high school level, where we have the most amount of data collection, because that's where the most amount of the data is available to us. However, some of the data this year is absent because of what happened to us last year. So you have no state examinations, grades 3 through 8, no Regents exams. And that looks a little bit different than where we are. Also, our data, depending on where it is, and we try to reference it on the pages that are in there. There are lags in the data because that's the way the state does it. So, for example, a lot of the financial stuff that's here is 2 years old. But we can't get anything more frequent than that until next year, and then we'll get 2-year-old data again from that end of it. Graduation data always lags. We know what our graduates are because of the fact that we track it ourselves, but it's never official until the state puts it in the report card that it releases to the public on the website. So we don't put that in there until it's officially released. And then on the last page of that, Dr. Robbins, if you could just click to the last page, because the second page just talks about the elementary schools and the middle schools. The fiscal accountability piece, there's operating costs by school. That's homegrown. That's just the Shen thing I've been doing for 26 years, I guess. And I did it before that in other places, but it's pretty interesting to look at. The athletics, the season summaries, you'll see there's a season summary for the fall and the winter, and then there's no season summary for the spring, because we never got to do that. Food service, we've got some meals and things that are in there. Some of that, the counting is still going on. As you all know, Katie had a very busy COVID season and a very busy summer season and moving into it. So on to the last page. The statistics that you're looking at here, other than the one that says opening enrollment, were all dipsticked on Friday morning. I normally do it the day of the presentation, but we were too busy tracking the responses to the surveys that had to go out to the parents to certify for students. So opening enrollment, 9462. It's down approximately 108 from 1920, but our enrollment settles around 30 days in, which is why we do the Beds Day thing that first Tuesday in October. So we'll get a better feel for what that actually is. The numbers actually have been climbing a little bit each day. They will drop some, but they will also climb as we go through. The demographics of the student body is constantly evolving and changing. The numbers are decreasing in the largest group, which are the white students, currently at 73.55. If you go back I go back from memory, if I go back 26 years, you're talking about a district that was primarily in the low to mid 90s for white students. And so where it is today, 73.55, and subsequently as that percentage goes down, the other percentages increase. We've actually, since we've registered 376 students since July 1, we've registered more than that. That's all that was in the system as of Friday morning. There's probably another 100 that have gone in. We just literally put them into the system so that they'd be there. But that's what it was Friday morning. It said we had 1901 for completely virtual learning. I just looked at it now. It's almost 2,000. So again, that was Friday, that was Friday, this is today. 315 students registered for homeschool. We had 205 students registered for homeschool last year at that time. And we have 66 homeless students in the district as of September 9th. And again, the homeless process is the students that were homeless during the last school year are homeless into the beginning of the next year. School personnel over the summer and into the fall revisit those student residency questionnaires with families, and then that determines the number as we go down the road. That number is also ever changing. It goes up and it goes down based on the time of the year.
So Bob, can you just define homeless? Because people's view of homeless is someone physically living on the street, but that's not the definition.
Right. The basic definition that the federal government and New York State goes by is that the student or family lacks a permanent fixed nighttime residence. So you can have, when we've had this in Clifton Park, we've had families that their house caught on fire. They were temporarily located, in some cases outside the district, while their home was assessed by insurance, repaired by insurance, and they moved back in. They're homeless. They could still be employed and be making money, but under the law, they're homeless. And then, of course, you have other cases where you'll have students who've left home and they're living with somebody else. They're homeless.
Does that mean foster care as well?
No, the foster care is a different category. In the last 2 or 3 years, the state's made an effort to really define that, because homeless used to be foster students awaiting placement were homeless, placement in a permanent residence. That's no longer the case either, so they've kind of cleaned that up. So the homeless category is just, it's very difficult to define it all. One of the things a lot of people think of is when the school year is over, they're not homeless the next year. Well, that's only if their situation has changed. They could be homeless for 5 years if they lack a permanent fixed nighttime residence. Mr. Presley?
Does that definition apply if you have a student whose parents are separated but have joint custody of the kid and are in different districts?
No. Because one parent in the district has to be the designated parent.
We do get that from time to time, where families that have split have to agree on a primary residence, because the primary residence would determine where the child goes to school. So if they're split and they live in the same district, it's okay at the high school level, but at all of our other levels, it may not be the same, because the buildings may be different. So they'd have to agree on that. And certainly if one's in district and one's out of district, they have to designate that.
Quick question, and I think it was in the longer presentation. The 1901, now 2000 in CBL, the vast majority of that is elementary, correct?
No.
No?
No, it's actually, I'll pull it up.
Didn't look at the right thing.
You can't see this from here, from where you are, but a large, I guess if you were to say of all the numbers, more than 50% are elementary, that's correct. That's also simply by the fact that it's K through 5, so there's 6th grade levels there. For example, high school has, I'm looking at my COVID numbers too. This is the CBL numbers. High school has 546.
The percentage.
Yeah, percentages, yeah. I pulled up the COVID one. Hang on one second.
Let me do this. I'll get that data back and share it out to the board. So I'll do that to Friday bulletin, if you don't mind.
One question for you. Do we know if we had instances where we had students coming from other districts that were closing or going virtual and they wanted to come here to get another experience? Do we track that, or will we?
You mean if they've legally moved into the district?
Yeah.
Well, we know if they present the proper credentials and register from school, we'll know what school they came from. We won't necessarily know the reason unless they share the reason.
Right. But we'll see
sometimes
where they're
people,
coming from, though.
sometimes people share things with the registrar when they're registering, and that's actually helpful information which we use to share with the superintendent for planning purposes. And actually, the grade levels for the CVL, as I said, if you count all of them, there's 142 in kindergarten, 164 in
Well,
first.
actually, I have the percentages. So
Okay.
at elementary level is 24%, middle school level is 21%, high school level is 15%, and then we have breakdown by buildings as well. The building with the highest percentage of students is, if I'm not mistaken, is Scano.
Let's say it's Scano.
So it's pretty fairly even when you look across the board in terms of percentage across the buildings based on the size of buildings as well.
The smallest grade level is 110, that's ninth, and the largest is 189, which is grade 2 across the district. So that's kind of the window.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it, Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carmen is going to come forward, and as Becky come forward, one of the things that, again, the code of conduct, and I just put it right on this page that we made the changes. We modified the code, and we will still continue to modify the code. The purpose of this conversation is focused on modification of the code to add some language related to COVID protocols. Larger cut schools open now, and we need to have those things in place. If we have the unfortunate situation of a disciplinary consequence that comes in that the code of conduct has to speak to, we need to have that code approved by the board. So that's the reason why we're making those modifications, or suggesting those modifications. Becky, you want to continue?
I think most of it's covered. I mean, as we all know, this has already been, the code of conduct goes in front of the Board of Education in April to be approved before the beginning of the school year. But with COVID upon us, we needed to make the modification to incorporate that language, and that's what you see here highlighted in yellow.
Yeah, and so the bullet points are probably the big things: the mask wearing, the social distancing, all the things that we kids have been doing 2 days in, doing very well. So again, the code is also it's not about penalizing; it's about reminding of the expectations. And so that's why, again, we want to bring that as we talk about the reopening, how we have to make that adjustment to that document.
And I personally just caught something, because at the time that we had updated this, it was just staff self-certifying. We need to include student here also. I just caught that. Is there a reason for it being so far down on page 15
No,
rather
we
than
just
at the
added
top?
it to a section that kind of felt appropriate in the document.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a pretty long document.
Oh, yeah. No. It's very long.
So again, just it was informational, so the board was aware of that piece of it. We will be reviewing the code of conduct for some other reasons as we move forward. So just again, I'm sure there's probably some other discussion on that, but I just wanted to bring that piece to the board.
And I was hoping to share something at this time, because I thought it would fit with the code of conduct. It's not specific to COVID, but it was something that I really wanted to share. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay. So I just don't want to forget anything, so I'm just going to read what I prepared. So it has to do with the Confederate flag, and I felt this would just be a good place to talk about it rather than using board comments or waiting till the end. Just to restate the obvious, there's a lot happening around us. The pandemic, historic and destructive weather patterns, and what we're hearing about right now outside, our Black Lives Matter movement is growing momentum. Well, some would say it's all political as a reason to dismiss some or all these things. As a public education provider, we cannot do that. We cannot, because these very things get in the way of us doing our job, and that is to provide equitable public education. So we have outside students, former students, and other members from the community protesting our inaction on the issue essential to the safety and dignity of all members of our student body and community. They have made several demands, and our district has responded to those demands. But that doesn't mean that we're done. One of the demands is to ban the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is a symbol of hate that I saw all around me as a child growing up in the South. I am now horrified to see, when I do see it flown in the back of a pickup truck here in Clifton Park, and I have seen that. One day when I was young, one of my friends, who is black, asked me why my brother had a gigantic Confederate flag and why I wasn't embarrassed for her to see it in my home. And I was completely confused by this statement when she first presented it, when she first asked. And this led to many conversations. She was incredibly patient. And because of that, it drastically changed my understanding and response to the Confederate flag and what it does represent. My family, and I'm referring to the one I grew up with, is far from perfect. But as time has passed, they have also grown in their understanding, and we talk about how damaging our mistakes were to those we very much care for and love. To provide some important context, and I'm sure I'm not saying anything that you don't know, but I feel it's important to state, and that is the Confederate flag represents the Southern cause that launched the Civil War, which was for the preservation of slavery, the preservation of an economic system rooted in owning and outright cruelty and violence towards other human beings. This flag has been used by hate groups as a tool to promote inequity, inequality, injustice, and hate. It is a symbol we agree is divisive and at odds with our nation and our community's commitment to equality and justice. It is intended to incite fear, fear used to control and divide. It is not used to or meant to unite. The Civil War is a painful part of our history, and it should be preserved in our history books, not through a flag. To give another perspective, in Germany, flying the flag of the German Reich and displaying Nazi symbols are illegal. Germany continues to examine its past and no longer promotes the hate those symbols embolden. Our country's First Amendment, the freedom of speech, has become the rationale for failing to prohibit or ban this hate symbol across the board. It has kept many states from banning hate symbols even in their schools, and now it's keeping our district from committing to changes long overdue. Without these changes, we are complicit. We are failing to honor the very oath we took, which is to faithfully discharge the duties of the office of a school board member according to the best of our ability. Shen does have a policy that speaks to this, and it's called the Dignity for All, 7555. And it states, and I'm paraphrasing actually, that harassment, bullying, and discrimination are conduct inconsistent with the district's educational mission. The code of conduct goes a little further under its dress code by saying students, staff, and visitors shall not wear or display racially or ethnically provocative or divisive symbols while at school or participating in school-related activities. The reason I believe we should go further in banning the Confederate flag is that it is a racist symbol that disrupts the learning environment. To take that a little bit further, New York State is now considering legislation that would prohibit our state government from selling or displaying symbols of hate and specifically identifies the battle flag of the Confederacy as an example. Our First Amendment is not without exceptions, and that this is important. For example, a speech intended to provoke someone to break the law, also referred to as speech intended and likely to lead to imminent lawless action. Speech used to intimidate or legitimately threaten someone else is not protected by the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has stated that in determining whether free expression can be restrained in schools, student expression can be limited only if it causes material and substantial disruption to the education of students. There are many cases out there. I'm not a legal eagle, so there was no time to cite that, and nor do I think you want to hear all the cases. But I have to ask the question, and that is, are we willing to wait for imminent lawlessness to happen in our district before we take action? And I hope the answer is no. We need to take action now for racial justice. We need to unequivocally affirm that Black lives and people of color matter by creating a policy that explicitly bans symbols of hate, such as Confederate and Nazi imagery from our school grounds, similar to what our neighboring district is doing right now. I know we are waiting to hear back from legal, and at a minimum, we should acknowledge this now. And I also feel it's important to note that we do provide examples in our regs of other things. So having these inked is not unprecedented, and the district has already posted that the Confederate flag is banned in a post on the grapevine that was only made just days ago. So in summary, fearing the unknown will not protect us. Understanding the problem and being part of the solution may not dispel the fear right away, but it will empower us. This isn't something that a one-off diversity training course will fix. This requires an open and diligent mind, a mind that is willing to see the beautiful tapestry right in front of us. We cannot say we are committed to excellency until we put forth practices that deter anti-racist and anti-bias behavior so that all have an equal opportunity to a quality education. Thank you for.
So, Naomi, thank you for sharing that with us. Now, I know, and I think you were referring to Niskayuna that did put their
Yes.
publicly, right? They're looking to incorporate some verbiage into their policy. And I know we are doing the same. We are trying to find the right avenue and lane to stay in to be able to do that. Our code of conduct clearly speaks to the importance of fostering these kinds of positive environments, and that all students can feel safe and thrive. I think it is very important, and I find it incumbent upon us to do this the right way. I think we all feel the same way around this table. I don't think there's anybody that feels any different, and I know we know that. Subsequently, the language will be reviewed to make sure it is, 1, legally substantiated, 2, comprehensive, and 3, can be effectively enforced. If we just put words in a paragraph that means nothing, it's not going to mean anything to anybody. So that's why I think it is incumbent upon all of us to be thoughtful in the direction that we are taking now. And again, I must emphasize, there is not one person in this room, I don't think, would go against what you said.
I think it's good to hear from the board, not just one or two people, but from the board.
Agreed.
Yes.
So Bob actually put together a great, although I found it very hard to read, but I had to really blow it up, a graph, a spreadsheet, if you will, that really put together, and I know people will find fault with this, but these are the things that we have done historically. And I know, Bob, you can probably speak to it because this was during your tenure too, and open discussions that we've had around the board table. So if you'd like to comment on it, please do so.
Sure. Before I do that, a couple things on policy is when we write a set of policies, we want to have things that say what we don't do. We don't harass people. We don't allow harassment. We want to ensure that we always have a dignified environment. But there's also room in a policy where you clearly define what you do. And there's examples of organizations that say, you see right here, we have 2 flags, one representing our school, one representing our country. I think it's appropriate to have a flag that represents your state. Okay? And you say, that's the context of the flag. Now, there are other things that people may want to add, but that also carries a context that then our school is endorsing that. So we have to be very careful. But we have to understand that you can write a policy, things that you do, and limit it to specific purposeful things behind it. And then you also say in other parts of your policy, we're not going to tolerate harassment. We're not going to tolerate hate speech, hate symbols. So my feeling is that I carry your sentiments. I also think that there are ways in our policy overall to have things that we clearly define that we do, and also clearly define things that we don't. And that way, as things progress, you have a lot of redundancy as things change, because things will change from year to year. And you have to be very careful, because sometimes courts can say, stop that, and if you don't have something else to back you up, you don't have anything else, and you may have some problems. But I agree with your sentiments and what you brought forward. Back to this. This came from thoughts from board members that we want to talk more. It's also coming from our actions needed. That's the term I use. And that our students brought forward a set of actions that are needed. And I simply broke them out within the specific sections, starting with 13. I think I ended up with about 16 of them. And if you ignore that top column of dates, but really it's, if I look at, hiring and promoting, I put an X by each that pertain to hiring and promoted. The second column over, curriculum, I put an X. Okay, so that indicates that that's a curriculum topic. There's a couple things on code of conduct, okay, that have been brought as critical actions. And then I also added employee training and practices and student culture. And so those are kind of 5 areas that we could cluster where these demands are. Now that creates an opportunity that we can have specific meetings in our agenda to not just go over parts of it, but all of it. Because, for example, I also looked in our agenda for this year, for example, on the 26th of January. We have something scheduled on curriculum involving the discussion we've had on mirrors and windows, and that primarily pertains to primary school, elementary school books. But I think there's time between then and now, and there's also a lot of room to add other things. What about the books that we have in front of middle school and high school students? That's been identified as something we need to look at. So with the board's permission, I think this starts to generate specific groupings of topics so that in subsequent meetings, starting with probably, we do have a discussion, I think, on October 6th, first reading on a code of conduct. I think you're at the committee meeting to do that. We can build on not just to report it on policy, but also what do we want to do, what do we want to talk about in addition to that in terms of code of conduct issues. On November 24th, we're scheduled to have a meeting with our diversity committee. They've done great things in terms of how we establish policies for hiring and promoting and practices within our adult leaders in the school. That would be great to hear as that presentation on November 24th, and add more in terms of how are you going to address back to where those X's are and for hiring and promoting. So I see there's just an opportunity where we have things scheduled as kind of smaller pegs in the ground to put a bigger peg in the ground that says, look, we're going to address these needs that have been brought forward, and that allows us the time to have deeper presentations, proactively communicating about it instead of reactively communicating about it. So room to tighten this up. I can spend more time on it, but I think I just wanted to bring this into public venue, that there's a lot of room in our schedule throughout the year, because we want to finish the year really addressing this, not just on one meeting, but on deliberate action, deliberate conversations at meetings.
Can I ask, is this going to be shared with the committee tomorrow? Diversity committee?
It's not my document to share.
Yeah.
So is this
I'm
something
willing to send it out. I'd like to primarily share with other board members and get your comments. I mean, this is not something, I think of just pushing the ball forward and getting some momentum behind it as I can, but really the conversation needs to come from other board members.
Kickoff, yeah, he just put it together.
Yeah. And if you scroll a little bit more, sorry about that. If you scroll a little bit more, we're also asking for conversation from our students. You know, in the past, we've done some things, and I think they were helpful for technology with the student speak outs, but there's an opportunity to have a student speak out. And again, we're at a different time than we were years ago, or if we wanted to address it with, Student Senate coming forward and saying, having more specific presentations. We have room to do that and time to prepare so that we have the right conversation going through it as to what we want to do next. So I'll send this out to your comment.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Well, okay, I'll send a document for both of you.
So, Naomi, what you said, and I think you're right, Deanna, that we all are on the same page when it comes to that. There's nothing good about the Confederate flag. There's no good, you can't twist that anyway to say, well, it's positive because of this. It's not, it's a symbol.
I appreciate you saying that.
I think that there is misinformation that's being shared in our area, in our town. The Confederate flag is not displayed in Shen, and any student who comes into Shen today wearing the Confederate flag will be, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Robinson, they will be asked to leave or asked to change that. We don't tolerate it. It's not approved. So there is misinformation that we're allowing this, which is not the case by any stretch of the imagination. A kid comes in wearing a swastika on a shirt or draws it on his hand and walks around. He's going to be asked to leave. There's specific guidance that prevents that type of thing. Can we do more? Absolutely, and I fully support additional steps. But I just want to make sure that the public understands that it's not something that we're permitting or allowing by any stretch.
Thank you, Todd. Is there any other comments?
Can I just offer one quick comment? First of all, Mr. President, thank you very much for, and it's not surprising, you're a structure guy, from providing some structure for the board's continued discussion and deliberations. And I was fortunate to see the document before, so I have a few ideas of how we can use that document to piggyback certain things that we can plan for. And it's important. It's important. I think a point that you made and the point I want to make here is that whatever we do, and it's everything that we're doing as a system, we can't do things that are piecemeal or attached to, or things that are only championed by an individual, because when that individual is no longer championing it, that thing falls off the table, or that thing's only a secondary. So all the things that we have been doing as a system speaks to institutionalizing practice. And so those practices become the norm. Mr. Gilbert alluded to the several years back, and I'm thinking so Mr. Flint was here as a principal then, so at least 5, maybe 6 years back, we had some situation where wasn't many, a few students who decided that driving around and having the Confederate flag on the back of their truck was a thing to do. Not only here in Clifton Park, quite frankly, it was happening in many communities at the same time. I don't know what was spurring on, but that was a reality. Those things were addressed, and that's when the code of conduct language, by the way, came on board to support, to give administration the authority to back in to act upon those things accordingly. So just give some context to things as we move forward. And so since that point, things have been addressed. Certainly we had several years ago, in 2016, we had some differences as a result of political party affiliations that we had to address and bring it back into what we are, a teaching institution to understand. And if everybody recall, we had the march out when kids left the day of whatever, and our kids were great. They all came out to the field, and we had kids who had total opposites perspective. But those kids came together and shared their different perspective, and everyone learned from that piece of it. So I think the piece that I'm always trying to do, and I know that sometimes people say, well, that's not being bold enough or not whatever. At the end of the day, I can mandate somebody don't do this now if I have the authority to stop you doing it from now. But if you don't fundamentally understand why doing or why not doing is important, that action is going to continue the next breath, the next step away. And so fundamentally, that's what we're trying to do as an institution of learning. That's who we are. And so all these things we're trying to do is not only change behavior, but increase knowledge and awareness. Because I'm going to end with this simple quote. We had a presenter who presented to us several years back, and he said something that was so profound. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. But that's the first part of that statement. The second part of the statement is, now if you know something else, now you have to make a choice. So that's important that once, what people know, we all have our biases based upon our experiences, our discriminatory ways, whatever those nuances are that come. But once we know something, it's one thing. But you know something else, now you have to make a choice. And so what we're trying to do to inform, to educate, so we can make choices that's healthy for us as a community as whole. So that's the balancing act in all these things as we move forward. And I think as a system, we have done a lot of things to move that needle of progress, and clearly doing a lot more to move that needle of progress. A lot of work at foot. A statewide look is taking place right now as we speak to speak to the broader issue of equity across the state from a policy perspective, and then from an action perspective by the Board of Regents. And so there's a lot of momentum, and the piece is, how do we move from rhetoric to institutionalizing action that lends to fundamental shifts in outcomes. And so that's the heavy lift. This piece is easy. We can all go out and raise hell. But the question is, doing the work here to fundamentally change practices, fundamentally change psychology, fundamentally change people's disposition that lends to fundamental differences in outcomes. And that's what we want. As a country, we have done too much of this. Too much rhetoric, and these parts didn't translate. And that's why we're still here to this day, still having the same conversation. And so the point I'm making to you as a system, we have been focused in this arena. How do we start to make those changes so we have different outcomes? And just give a perfect example of this. When we first started 3-8 testing, we saw, and we still have some disparities. I'm not saying that we've solved that piece of it, but we saw the gross disparities, and for us, it's more socioeconomics than race differences. And we saw that, and we said, how we have to say we want parity in outcomes. And guess what? We started working on those things, and now guess what we have? We have greater parity in outcomes. Yes, there are factors that dictate who may score high, who may score lower that we can't control, but the ones we can, we're focused on, because that was something we were determined to do over time and not have this become a repeated generation versus generation from generation is progressing and getting better. That's what we're trying to do as a system. So I share that with as a board because, back to Mr. Press's comment, these issues are too important for us to have a knee-jerk, one-time reaction to it and say, yeah, we did this and we're done. It's too important. It's a fundamental shift in what we're doing. And we're seeing it right now, even how we educate kids. And we've seen the disparities right now show up in front of our faces between kids who have access and kids who have support and kids who don't have access to support, the point that Mr. Delalo was speaking to before. And fundamental as a system, we have even said that that's not going to happen in our system. We can't have kids just because of the economic situation of your family. You're going to get a less experience than kids who don't. And so that's a commitment that we make, and it's the same commitment to this. So I hope that as a board you see that it's about how do we institutionalize things and not necessarily how we just have a reaction to something. Because there have been too many reactions, and I'm telling you, I'm not a reaction kind of person because I see what reaction does, just not to another reaction. I'm about how do we fundamentally change things so we have a different outcome some point in the future than what we've experienced in the past. So I think the conversations tonight, I appreciate it from a board, will lend to more of that as we move forward because the board's lever is the policy lever. And it's a legal lever, it's a moral lever, it's an ethical lever, and all those things, it's not one or, it's all those things. And so how do we then collectively put those things together to move us as a system forward? So again, thank you, Deanna, for leading this charge, and Mr. Presser for putting that graphic together, because that really kind of shows how we can structure our conversations and move things forward.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think that I believe strongly that we want to not have the knee-jerk action, and that's the reason why I used the word the lawless action, which is the legal term that I found, which they call it the imminent lawless action. We don't want to get there. We want to be ahead of this. We want to be thoughtful. And as Mr. Milia shared, the diversity in this district has drastically changed. It's not in the 90s for whites. It's 73.55%. And no, I haven't seen someone on campus with a Confederate flag. But we know it's out there. We know it's all around us. But we're not everywhere all the time, and this is something that we need to use the public forum to have this conversation to let others know that it is very important to us, and that we are watching it, and we are here to do the right thing. And so this isn't. I don't see sharing what I did tonight as knee-jerk. I wasn't saying that. Yeah. So I think it's just very important. I really appreciate the work that she put into the chart. I think that I do look forward to looking at it, giving you some feedback. I think that is important. The reason why I mentioned the committee is charged with carrying this initiative forward. So I'm hoping that at some point you'll feel comfortable sharing it with the diversity committee as well. Yeah. They're energetic. They're all good people. I'm looking forward to meeting with them tomorrow, and I think that they would want to be part of that as well. And a very important component is the students. As part of this entire initiative, I mean, they're outside, whether they're former students or not. They were here, and that is part of their charge, is that things haven't changed. And so understanding is part of it, so that we can make meaningful, thoughtful change that leads us in the right direction. So
I have a couple comments.
Okay.
I think we're getting close to having an agreement here. One is my personal experience with the Confederate flag is in the late 70s. As a young teenager, I grew up with a TV show called The Dukes of Hazzard.
I remember it.
Okay?
Yes.
So that was the power of ideas, and that was an example, and Mr. Delal used the right term, of showing your warts, understanding your warts, and understanding that on that TV show, for people of my generation, it was presented as a cool thing. That car was a symbol of two guys living the ultimate life of driving their car around, doing what they want. It wasn't based on reality, it was a pure fantasy. The car flew in the air, didn't crash, and it had a huge Confederate flag. And that is an example of how symbols come back, okay? Up until 1948, the Confederate flag was never seen. I've read some history on this. I think the Southern Poverty Law Group is very good at some of these explanations. But what happened after the Civil War, 20 or 30 years later, in terms of gaining power in communities in the South, you had to bring back glamorization and monuments that were dedicated to Civil War heroes of the South. And then you brought back names of bases prior to World War II, because that was sort of a political accommodation. There's always been a lot of political accommodation with Southern communities wanting to gain power for the white community within that community. And it's been a constant way. What has changed is that the techniques are much more subtle. So by the time you got to the late 70s, you insert that message in a TV show for, really, I was an 8th or 9th grader when that happened. And it was just sort of, hey, that's okay. I didn't have the benefit of the conversation you had when you were probably at the same age I was. I got to see the message that came through. So that's the type of thing we all need to kind of talk about, is how this stuff came about in such a way. My feeling is that racism needs to be confronted and then eradicated. And I use that word very carefully because from Latin that means you take it out, root and all. What hasn't happened is that we confront it, we deal with the symbols, but we don't take it out, root and all. We just pull up the weed at the top, and it stays down there. And later on, it comes back, not in the same shape or form, but, so you've gone from slavery to Jim Crow to the 1960s level Civil War, 19th level civil rights battles. But then, hey, late 70s, make it something that people will see and glamorize it and say it's not a big deal, it's just a TV show. So you got to look at a way that you take it out root and all in your policies. And I don't think you want to do it in a reactive way. You want to do it in a way that it's no longer there. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. I think we're very much on the same path here. It's just we had different experiences that got us here. That's all.
Very well put, Bob. Any other further comments? Okay, moving on to consent items, I believe. Okay. Treasurer's report, can I get a motion? Gary first, Bob second. Any comments, questions? None?
I have one thing, and this is, I think for Grace's benefit and to students as well. If you can open it up.
Which one? Treasurer's report?
Yeah, Treasurer's report, page 7. So one of the things we've got to worry about is, are we going to have enough money throughout the year? I think I'm confident of this, but I always find this graph very helpful. So every time I see this, I turn to this page, and it's typically reassuring. Yeah, here it is. Okay.
It's kind of awkward.
Yeah, you kind of twist it around when you look at it, but really, as of July, we spent $5.2 million this year, but that is less than what we spent last year. Now, it's just 1 month, but this is a helpful way to get something out of the report, because right now, this is the year we want to make sure that, we're tracking the money, but if you want something to see, and if you're new to this, turn to this page and you'll see, and then you can start asking some questions. Why are we spending less than this time the year before? Well, we had a smaller summer school program, such things happen, but that's what I think drives some of the discussion we want to have this year, and also in terms of spending the money. So I just want to point that out to you. Use the tool.
Okay. All in favor? Everybody on board? Motion passes. Minutes. I can't combine all of these because not everybody's here. August 11th, I think, Todd, you were not here.
I was here. I wasn't the 18th or the 25th.
Okay, so Christine's not, okay. So can I get a motion to pass on August 11th? Okay, Gusta first, Todd second. Comments, questions? All in favor? Motion passes. August 18th, Todd was not here. Can I get a motion? Gusta first, Naomi second. comments, questions? All in favor? Motion passes. August 25th, Todd was not here. Can I get a motion? Bob first, Naomi second. Comments, questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Action items. Okay. Approval of sports booster clubs. Can I get a motion? Gusta first. Todd second. Any comments or questions? All the booster clubs needed to be included in this, even though some of them may be going off to the spring, so we include everybody here. Okay. All in favor? Motion passes. Approval of the audit committee members 2020-21. So we added Todd to this, so motion?
Motion.
Naomi first, Gusta second. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Scholarships and local grant donations with gratitude. Can I get a motion? Bob is first, Gusta is second. Any comments? All in favor? Motion passes. Closure of Key Bank sub-fund scholarship accounts. Can I get a motion? Todd is first, Bob is second. Any comments?
For the ones that are not zero, where does that money go? Because it talked about they're inactive, and that's why they're being closed.
So, I thought someone was going to say something else. So those cases, we put them in a trust agency account. It's like a holding account, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so where is that actually in the financials, that account?
Yes,
It is?
yeah, it is. It's one of several. In the report that Bob just mentioned, yeah.
Okay. It wasn't obvious. Okay.
All in favor?
I'll do a follow-up and
Okay,
give you the
thanks.
specifics.
Okay, all in favor? Good. Okay, motion passes. Contracted services, special ed or Aurelia? Can I get a motion? Todd is first, Bob is second. Any comments? All in favor? Motion passes. Now, Mrs. Mylott up to talk about special ed placements.
Yes, I have the recommendations for the committees on preschool and school-age special education thus far this month. Any questions?
I'd just like to hear some comments from you regarding special education and what we're doing right now this year. What's changed? Is it harder? Is it easier? What's making it work?
I would say that it is probably more difficult for our more disabled students. Some of them struggle with having to sit at a desk for longer periods of time. Many of our students require more of a multi-sensory environment where they can move around and they have access to things that we can't have in classrooms right now, soft materials that we can't wash. But, we had a very successful summer program, so we're seeing that continue, and I think we had a lot of anxiety coming in to the school year, and I'm very happy. I've been to almost every classroom, and things, I believe, are going well. So it's really a lot of adapting to a different teaching environment and a different learning environment for our students. But they are, as usual, rising to the occasion.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion? Gusta first, Todd is second. Any further comments? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, Michelle. And Mrs. Bush coming up for approval of staffing recommendations.
Yes, I'd like to just recognize some of the retirements that are on the staffing recommendations for this evening. Robert Hurdle is retiring after 21 years as a math teacher at the high school. We have two on this list that are here with us tonight. Robert Melia is retiring after 26 years as assistant superintendent of schools. Sally Way, retirement after 23 years. She's an art teacher at the high school. Michelle Bridges, retirement after 16 years, elementary classroom aide at Shattuckon. Kelly DeFisciani, retirement after 12 years as public information officer, and that's 12 years as a Shen employee. She's been with the district longer than that. Deborah Frame, retirement after 18 years, food service helper. And Guillermo Panada, retirement after 10 years as a bus monitor. So those are the retirements that we have this evening.
So
I have a couple of questions. Yes.
questions?
Sorry, and I apologize, we have two last-minute kind of corrections on the coaching, and they'll appear on the next staffing agenda, but I wanted to bring this to board's attention. Heidi Ackerley is going to be the JV soccer head coach, not the varsity head coach, and there's an adjustment in the coaching salary to $57.85, so that will appear on the next one. And Mr. Chris Douglas is going to be the boys golf coach, not field hockey. So apologies from the HR office who was trying to get everything in, and those were two missteps, but they will be corrected, and thank you.
There's some special retirements for sure this year. So, with heavy heart, can I have a motion? Bob first, Naomi second. Any further comments? Gary.
I noticed that Ms. Amelia's name is on the list for retirement. And I would like to say that the creation of position that he currently occupies and he's going to be retiring from is probably one of the key actions of the district. The kind of numbers, data that he lives with and makes useful to us is very, very powerful. Without interpretation, application, and learning from that information, it's just a collection of numbers. It has very little use. He's made it a living thing that made it a powerful instrument, a powerful tool for the district. Thank you for his efforts.
Agreed. Any further comment? Okay, all in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, Joe. Oh, extension of the, Jill, are you doing this one too? I'm sorry, I should have wrote it up. Extension of the SASE?
Yes, that's our substitutes. Yes, our school substitutes have an agreement, and we are recommending a one-year extension to their agreement.
Have a motion? Bob first, Justin second. Everybody's slow tonight. Any further comment?
So there were no changes, just one-year extension?
One-year extension and a slight increase on the rate, $228 a day for substitutes.
All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, Jill. Thank you. Policies and procedures, Mrs. Harmon?
Following policies were presented for first reading last month, and several of them having to do with, or a few of them having to do with reopening of school. Any questions regarding that?
Can I get a motion? Naomi first, Bob second. Any further comments for Rebecca? Okay, all in favor? Motion passes. Thanks, Becky. Okay, further public comments. Just two things that I want to remind everybody about: the NYSBA virtual event that we're, I'm sure, talking to Vanessa, and make sure that if you're able to join, please do so. And I had this up, I'm ready to go before Dr. Robinson. Also, there's a webinar announcement through NYSBA, Equity and Inclusivity, answering the call of action. Dr. Robinson will actually be on the panel. That is Wednesday, 10/7, so if you plan to attend that, please let Vanessa know that. Okay? Any further comments for tonight? Okay, hearing none. One more time, for the good of the order, if there's any other topics that the board feels that they would want to bring to the table tonight to discuss? Okay, then we're going to head to adjournment. Can I have a motion? Justice first, Bob is second. Everybody have a great night. All in favor?